history of the world, only a few generations have been granted the role of defending freedom in its hour of maximum danger. I do not shrink from this responsibility. I welcome it. I do not believe that any of us would exchange places with any other people or any other generation. The energy, the faith, the devotion which we bring to this endeavor will light our country and all who serve it. And the glow from that fire can truly light the world. And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country.
Welcome back, truth seekers, to Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. Another week, another rabbit hole. Alright, truth seekers, time for a quick word from the sponsors who help us keep this countercultural conspiracy train rolling. First up, Skillcraft U.S. Government Pens. These aren't your average ballpoint, folks. These are the pens that sign legislation, document history, and fill out the forms that try to control our lives. But in your hand, the Skillcraft becomes a tool of resistance, a means to record your truth, to meticulously document the inconsistencies, the lies, the things they don't want you to see. Reliable, steadfast, built to withstand the pure bureaucratic apocalypse. Get your Skillcraft U.S. government pens today, because the truth needs to be written down, even when it goes against the grain. And now for the chroniclers of forbidden knowledge, the scribes of the suppressed, Moleskin notebooks. In a world of fleeting digital ephemera, the Moleskin stands as a bastion of tangible thought. Capture your theories, your observations, and your late-night epiphanies in a notebook that will outlast the digital dark age. The Moleskin is more than just paper and binding. It's a repository for your intellectual journey, a trusted companion as you delve into the uncomfortable questions, the overlooked evidence, the truths they try to bury. Get your Moleskin. Arm yourself with the power of documented dissent. The illusion of chance, unpacking random number generators. Welcome back to Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. We've just scratched the surface, questioning the very nature of reality itself. Now we need to get granular. We need to talk about the tools we use to measure that reality, or at least the aspects of it we attempt to quantify and control. At the heart of many of these tools lies a concept we often take for granted: randomness. Tonight we're dissecting the architecture of chance itself by looking at the random number generators, or RNGs. These aren't just gaming devices or the engine behind encrypted communication. They are, in theory, the ultimate arbiters of pure, unadulterated impartiality. Their fundamental purpose is to spit out numbers, sequences of digits that follow no discernible pattern. They are completely unpredictable. They are utterly unaffected by any external force. They are, in essence, a universe's dice, rolled in the vacuum of pure mathematics. Think about where we encounter them. In cryptography, the security of our digital world hinges on RNGs producing unpredictable keys. In scientific simulations, from weather forecasting to particle physics, random number generators are used to model complex systems where chance plays a role. In gaming, they determine everything from the drop rate of a rare item to the outcome of a virtual roulette wheel. The integrity of these fields, the reliability of these simulations, the fairness of these games, all depend on the absolute unwavering commitment of an RNG to its promise of randomness. Now, the scientific community, with its rigorous standards and its faith in objective measurement, insists on a crucial distinction: the difference between pseudo-random and truly random. Most RNGs we encounter in everyday computing are actually pseudo-random number generators, or PRNGs. These algorithms are sophisticated, capable of producing sequences that appear random to statistical tests. They start with a seed value, and then they apply a deterministic mathematical formula to generate the next number in a sequence. While the sequence can be incredibly long and appear random for practical purposes, it is, in theory, entirely predictable if you know the algorithm and the initial seed. If you run the same PRNG with the same seed, you get the exact same sequence every single time. It's like a pre-recorded loop of chaos. For true unpredictability, for the kind of randomness that genuinely leaves no fingerprint, we need hardware-based true random number generators, or TRNGs. These devices harness genuinely unpredictable physical phenomena. They might tap into the thermal noise in a resistor, the unpredictable timing of radioactive decay, or even the quantum fluctuations of a vacuum. These events are, according to our current understanding of physics, inherently random. They are not dictated by an algorithm. They are the universe's raw, unscripted output. And here's the crux of it: the bedrock assumption upon which the integrity of these TRNGs are built, that these physical phenomena are and must be impervious to external influence. For an RNG to be considered truly random, there should be absolutely no discernible pattern, no bias, and crucially, no external influence that can predict or alter its output. The universe's dice, when rolled, should land according to immutable physical laws, not the whispered intentions of an observer or the collective psychic static of a population. But what if that assumption is flawed? What if something does influence them? What if the universe isn't as compartmentalized as our scientific model suggests? What if the quantum field, an ethereal substratum of reality, is not just a stage for random events, but an active participant, capable of being nudged, however subtly, by the sheer weight of human attention and emotion? This is where the scientific community's insistence on pure randomness becomes so insistent. They need it to be pure. They need it to be a baseline, an uncorrupted signal against which we can measure phenomena. Any deviation, any hint of a pattern that correlates with something outside the expected physical inputs is an anomaly that threatens to unravel their models. It's precisely these anomalies we're interested in: the subtle deviations, the statistically improbable correlations, the whispers from the machine that suggest something more is at play than mere chance. We're setting the stage here, laying the groundwork for what might seem like a wild leap. But remember, the greatest discoveries often come from questioning the most fundamental assumptions. What if the very concept of absolute uninfluenced randomness is an illusion? What if the cold hard logic of a silicon chip, designed to be a perfect arbiter of chance, was more sensitive to the human condition than we ever imagined? What if, during moments of profound collective experience, like the events of 9/11, these devices didn't just register random data, but reacted to the overwhelming psychic and emotional energy that saturated the globe? The scientific establishment will tell you it's impossible. They'll point to the trillions of calculations, of the sophisticated algorithms, the physical principles governing these devices. They'll dismiss any perceived deviation as statistical noise, a fluke, or a misinterpretation of the data. But then why does the data persist? Why do the anomalies cluster around moments of intense global focus? We're not just talking about a statistical blip. We're talking about a pattern that seems to defy conventional explanation. And that, my friends, is where the real conversation begins. Probing the immaterial, the Pear Project, and global consciousness. Welcome back to Musings of a Cigarette Smoking Man. We've spent some time just dissecting the very notion of randomness, questioning its purity and its supposed immunity to external influence. We've established that the devices designed to generate it, random number generators, are foundational to so much of our technological and scientific world. But if these machines, designed to be impartial arbiters of chance, can indeed influence and be influenced, then how do we even begin to measure such an effect? Where do we find the evidence that these subtle nudges, these ripples in the fabric of reality, are actually happening? To tackle these profound questions, we need to turn our attention to a place that, for decades, stood at the very frontier of exploring the intersection between mind and matter. The Princeton Engineering Anomalies Research, or PEAR Laboratory, founded in 1979 at Princeton University by Robert G. John, a former dean of engineering, and his colleague Roger Nelson. The PEAR Lab wasn't your typical academic endeavor. It was born from a quiet, persistent investigation into phenomena that most mainstream science had long relegated to the fringes. Parapsychology, psychic phenomena, and the burgeoning yet still controversial idea that human consciousness might possess the ability to interact with the physical world in ways that defy classical physics. The origins of PEAR were, in themselves, a testament to a certain kind of intellectual bravery, or perhaps a stubborn refusal to dismiss compelling anomalies. John and Nelson, men with impeccable scientific credentials, were driven by a consistent stream of anecdotal evidence and preliminary research, suggesting that human intention could, under controlled conditions, influence the output of physical systems. This wasn't about spoon bending or levitation, at least not directly. It was about seeking measurable, repeatable effects, however small, that hinted at a mind-matter connection. They aimed to bring rigor and scientific methodology to what had previously been the realm of the true unexplained. The core of PEAR's research revolved around what they termed mind-matter interaction, or consciousness-related anomalies. Their experimental design was elegantly simple in concept, yet painstakingly executed. Participants would be asked to sit in front of a device and, through focused intention, try to influence its output. The most common devices were, you guessed it, random number generators. One of PEAR's flagship experiments involved a device called the stochastic resonance device, or more commonly, the random event generator, REG. These REGs were sophisticated electronic devices designed to produce a highly random output, typically a series of binary choices, ones and zeros, or equivalently heads and tails in virtual coin toss. Participants would be instructed to try and influence the REG to produce more ones than zeros, or vice versa. They would focus their attention, their mental energy, on a specific outcome. The experiment would run for a set period, and the output of the REG would be recorded and analyzed statistically. The methodology was designed to be robust. Control runs, where participants were not actively trying to influence the device, were interspersed with experimental runs. The REGs themselves were shielded and calibrated to ensure that inherent randomness was as pure as possible. The data collected over thousands of trials, involving thousands of participants, began to reveal a startling trend. While the effect was minuscule, typically only on the order of fractions of a percent deviation from chance expectation, it was consistently in the predicted direction. When people intended to increase the numbers of ones, the REGs produced slightly more ones. When they intended to decrease the number of zeros, the REGs produced slightly more zeros. Crucially, these effects were very often small, far too small to be noticed by the participants themselves. This suggested that the influence wasn't a conscious, forceful act, but a subtle resonance, a harmonic alignment between the focused intention and the physical output of the device. It was like tuning a radio to a distant station. You don't crank up the volume to force the signal, you adjust the dial until the faint signal comes through clearly. This also helped address the criticism that participants might be consciously or unconsciously manipulating the machines. The subtle nature of the observed effect makes such explanations unlikely. The implications of these findings were frankly mind-boggling. If human intention could reliably, albeit subtly, influence a physical system designed to be random, it suggested that consciousness was not merely an phenomenon, a byproduct of brain activity, but an active force in the universe, capable of interacting with the material world. This challenged the deeply entrenched materialistic worldview that dominates much of modern science, a worldview that posits consciousness as solely a product of the physical brain, with no causal influence on the external environment beyond our physical actions. However, the very nature of these findings, the small effect sizes, the focus on intention and consciousness, made them prime targets for skepticism and criticism from the mainstream scientific community. The established paradigms are built on clear cause and effect relationships, measurable forces, predictable outcomes. When a research points to the possibility that intention, an immaterial quality, can influence a material object, it raises fundamental questions about the completeness of our current scientific understanding. The results were often dismissed as statistical flukes, flawed methodology, or outright fraud, despite the Pear Lab's efforts to maintain rigorous standards and publish in peer-reviewed journals. The resistance was and remains considerable. It was this persistent yet subtle signal that led to the evolution of Pear's work into something even grander, the Global Consciousness Project, GCP. Roger Nelson, building on the Pear Lab findings, envisioned a network of these random event generators strategically placed all around the world. The idea was simple yet audacious. If individual consciousness could influence a single random number generator, what would happen if we tapped into this collective consciousness of billions of people? What if, in moments of shared human experience, moments of global joy, sorrow, fear, or celebration, these distributed RNGs would collectively deviate from their baseline randomness? The GCP was established in 1998, initially as a collaboration with researchers from various institutions worldwide. They deployed a network of random number generators in diverse locations, from university labs and private homes to more remote outposts. These devices were all connected to a central data collection system, continuously recording their outputs. The project's primary aim was to search for statistically significant deviations in the global output of these RNGs that correlated with major global events that engaged large numbers of people simultaneously. Think about the logic. A single human intention has a tiny effect, but imagine billions of people focusing their attention, experiencing these intense emotions, all directed towards a single event. Would that aggregated, amplified intention create a measurable ripple in the physical world? A ripple that could be detected by a network of sensitive instruments designed to measure just such deviations. The GCP was designed with meticulous attention to detail. The RNGs were based on well-understood physical principles, often quantum tunneling, ensuring their inherent randomness. Rigorous protocols were put into place to calibrate these devices, to account for potential environmental influences, and ensure the integrity of the data. The statistical methods used were sophisticated, designed to detect deviations from chance that were highly unlikely to occur by random fluctuation alone. The GCP began to accumulate data, as it did, the anomalies started to emerge. They looked for events that would likely capture global attention and evoke a strong emotional response. These included major sporting events like the World Cup final, significant religious holidays, natural disasters, and of course, even events of profound historical and emotional significance. The GCP researchers analyzed data around the inauguration of presidents, significant scientific announcements, and tragic events that gripped the world's attention. What they found, or at least what the data suggested, was a pattern. During periods of intense global engagement and emotional resonance, the network of RNGs showed statistically significant deviations from chance behavior. The output became slightly less random, exhibiting subtle biases that correlated precisely with the timing of these events. The more people involved, the more intense the collective emotion, the more pronounced the observed deviation. This was the groundbreaking and deeply controversial assertion that the collective consciousness of humanity, expressed through shared emotional experience and focused attention, can leave a measurable imprint on the physical world, influencing electronic devices designed to be utterly random. It was a data-driven hypothesis suggesting that the intangible realm of human consciousness was inextricably linked to the tangible realm of physical reality, that this connection could be detected through subtle behavior of machines. The scale of the Global Consciousness Project was unprecedented. It was a global experiment running continuously, gathering data that seemed to hint at a profound interconnectedness of all things. And yet, as we'll explore, this remarkable project and its findings were met with profound skepticism. The implications were too radical, too disruptive to the established scientific order, but the data, collected and analyzed with scientific rigor, demanded an explanation. And for those willing to look beyond the comfortable confines of conventional thought, that explanation might just lie in the very forces we're beginning to uncover tonight: the quantum field and the potent yet underestimated power of collective consciousness. Echoes in the data, 9/11, and the collective unconscious. Welcome back to Musings of a Cigarette-Smoking Man. We've laid the groundwork, questioning the very definition of randomness and exploring the scientific endeavors, like the Pear Lab and the Global Consciousness Project, that dare to probe the delicate interplay between mind and matter. We've seen the devices meticulously designed to be immune to external influence, designs that harness the fundamental unpredictability of the universe, have shown subtle yet statistically significant deviations from their expected random behavior when people are intensely focused on a particular event. Now we turn our gaze toward a moment that for so many represents a profound rupture in the fabric of our shared reality: the events of September 11th, 2001. This is not merely a historical event, it was a global psychic shockwave. Billions of people across every continent were riveted to their televisions, their radios, and their news feeds, witnessing with horror and disbelief the unfolding tragedy. It was a moment of unprecedented global focus, a confluence of intense emotions: fear, grief, anger, a shared sense of vulnerability, all converging on a single, devastating narrative. What would happen, one must ask, to our finely tuned instruments of randomness during such an unparalleled outpouring of collective human experience? The Global Consciousness Project, or GCP, had precisely this question in mind. They had already begun deploying their network of random number generators, essentially electronic oracles of chaos, around the globe. The hypothesis, remember, was that periods of intense unified human attention would cause these devices, as a network, to deviate from their baseline random output. And September 11th, 2001, presented the ultimate test case. The GCP data analysis for 9/11 is frankly chilling. What they discovered was not just a minor blip, but a pronounced and statistically overwhelming deviation from expected randomness that began before the attacks even occurred and continued through the period of intense global attention. Let's break this down. The GCP databases contain tens of thousands of hours of data from the RNG network. The normal expectation is that the output will fluctuate around the mean, as any random process does. There will be occasional spikes or dips, but over time, these deviations will average out. The probability of a significant deviation occurring by chance alone, especially one that persists and is coherent across a global network, is astronomically low. But on September 11th, 2001, the Global Consciousness Project Network registered an anomaly that was, by their rigorous statistical standards, impossible to explain through random chance. The deviation was significant, and it was global. The data showed that the RNGs became less random. The pattern of output shifted towards showing a discernible bias that was directly correlated with the unfolding events of that day. It was as if the very fabric of space-time, the substrate from which randomness is drawn, was being subtly influenced, or perhaps resonating, with the immense emotional energy being broadcast by humanity. This deviation wasn't confined to a precise moment of the attacks. The GCP data indicated that an anomalous pattern began to emerge in the hours leading up to the first plane hitting the World Trade Center. This is particularly unsettling, as it suggests that the effect wasn't simply a reactive response to a witnessed event, but perhaps an anticipatory resonance, a subtle attunement to the profound shift in collective human awareness that was about to occur. It's as if the universe, or at least the interconnected field of consciousness, was already bracing itself for the impact. The Global Consciousness Project researchers and scientists committed to empirical evidence carefully analyzed these findings. They ran through the data through multiple statistical tests to ensure the robustness of their conclusions. The probability that this particular pattern of deviation could have occurred by chance on 9/11 was calculated to be infinitesimally small, often cited as having odds against it in the millions or even billions to one. This level of statistical significance is far beyond what is typically required to accept a finding in scientific research. It points not to a fluke, but to a genuine correlation between the collective state of human consciousness and the behavior of a physical system. Consider the implication. We're talking about devices that operate on quantum principles, devices that are supposed to be impervious to anything other than random quantum fluctuations, yet they appear to react to the collective emotional field generated by humanity's shared experience of 9/11. This challenges the fundamental tenet of scientific materialism, the idea that consciousness is merely a passive byproduct of physical processes and has no causal influence on the material world beyond the actions of the individual bodies. Instead, the GCP data on 9/11 suggest a more interwoven reality, where consciousness, especially in its collective and emotionally charged forms, is an active participant, capable of leaving a measurable trace on the fundamental operations of the universe. But 9/11 is not the only instance where such anomalies have been noted. The Global Consciousness Project has been meticulously collecting data on a wide array of events that engage large numbers of people. They've observed similar, though often less dramatic, deviations during other moments of profound collective experience. Think about the impact of large-scale global meditations, where millions intentionally focus their minds towards peace or healing. The data suggests a subtle shift in randomness during these periods as well, albeit in a different pattern, perhaps reflecting the intentional, positive focus. Conversely, they have also observed deviations during other major human tragedies or periods of intense global anxiety. The timing of these anomalies often aligns with events that capture the world's attention and evoke strong, widespread emotional responses, whether these responses are of joy, sorrow, fear, or unity, royal weddings, significant global sporting events, like the World Cup, even the collective experience of watching a highly anticipated movie premiere in some cases. All these events, when they achieve a critical mass of engaged human consciousness, appear to leave a subtle yet detectable signature in the output of the global random number generator network. What we are seeing here is a pattern that suggests the existence of a field, or interconnectedness, that transcends the physical. Some researchers have referred to this global consciousness field, or the extended mind, or even the noosphere, a term coined by Pierre Teilhard de Chardin and Vladimir Vernadsky, referring to the sphere of human thought and collective consciousness enveloping the Earth. The Global Consciousness Project data provides a potential mechanism for detecting and quantifying the influence on this field on physical reality. It suggests that our shared emotional and attentional states are not just subjective experiences, they're energetic events that can interact with the fundamental randomness of the universe. In a perspective directly challenging the mechanistic, purely materialistic worldview that seeks to explain everything through quantifiable forces and deterministic laws, it hints at a more holistic universe, one where mind and matter are not separate but intimately intertwined. It suggests that the very act of a unified human focus, of shared emotional resonance, can subtly alter the probabilistic landscape, influencing the behavior of systems that are supposedly immune to such influences. When we consider the official narrative surrounding the events of 9/11 and events like them, we are often presented with a strictly linear cause and effect explanation focused on the actions of individuals or groups. The possibility that collective psychic state of humanity might have played a role, however subtle, is never on the table. But what if the data from instruments designed to measure pure chance suggest otherwise? What if these machines, in their unblinking adherence to probability, are actually recording echoes of our shared consciousness? The implications are vast. It suggests that our collective emotional states have a tangible impact on the world around us, and that technology, perhaps inadvertently, can serve as a witness to this impact. Yet it forces us to reconsider our place in the universe, to acknowledge the potential power of our collective mind, and to question the assumption that reality is solely governed by the physical forces we currently understand. The anomalies around 9/11, when viewed through the lens of the Global Consciousness Project, are not just data points. They are profound indicators that there are deeper currents at play, an interconnectedness that binds us all, and that our shared human experience leaves an indelible mark on the very fabric of reality. Time for a word from those who champion the free flow of ideas, even the ones that make the establishment squirm. First up, Monarch Literary. Monarch Literary isn't just a publisher, it's a sanctuary for the dissenting voice, a haven for the unconventional thought. They bring you the books that challenge the status quo, the narratives that expose hidden truth, the ideas that the powers that be would rather keep buried. If you're tired of the same old sanitized stories, if you crave literature that ignites your mind and fuels your skepticism, then Monarch Literary is your ally. Seek out their catalog. Arm yourself with forbidden knowledge, because truth, like a weed, always finds a way to break through the concrete. And now a dose for Sonic Truth Serum. Truth is Power, the vinyl album. This isn't just music, it's rebellion etched in wax. Truth is Power delivers raw, unfiltered sound that cuts through the noise and speaks directly to the soul of the awakened. It's a soundtrack for those who question everything, who refuse to be silenced, who understand that the most potent weapon against the deception is the unwavering pursuit of truth. From its gritty lyrics to its uncompromising melodies, this album is a call to arms for the independent thinker. Spin Truth is Power by Stephen Leake and let the resistance resonate. Finally, your lifeline to the unfiltered information in a world carefully cultivated narratives. Stephen Leake Radio. Stephen Leake Radio is your source for news and commentary that the mainstream media consistently ignores or distorts. We tackle the tough questions, expose the hidden agendas, and fearlessly challenge the official story. If you're searching for honest analysis, insightful interviews, and a relentless commitment to free speech, tune in to Stephen Leake Radio at stephenleake.com, because in the battle for truth, information is your most powerful weapon. The Observer and the Observed, Bridging Quantum Reality and Consciousness. Welcome back to Musings of a Cigarette-Smoking Man. We've journeyed through the seemingly solid ground of empirical data, through the perplexing outputs of random number generators, and into the unsettling correlations observed during moments of intense global consciousness. But to truly grasp how these anomalies might be manifesting, how the cold, hard logic of silicon could be subtly swayed by the invisible currents of human thought, we must venture into the strange and wonderful landscape of quantum mechanics. This is where our familiar, predictable world begins to fray at the edges. In the realm of the very small, the subatomic universe, the rules we take for granted simply don't apply. Here the particles don't behave like tiny billiard balls, obeying Newtonian physics. Instead, they exhibit behaviors that are, to put it mildly, counterintuitive. At the heart of these behaviors lies a profound implication that the active observation itself is not a passive recording of reality, but an active participation in its creation. Let's start with wave-particle duality. At the quantum level, entities like electrons and photons don't exist as strictly as waves or strictly particles. They exist in a state of potential, a superposition of possibilities. Until they are observed or measured, it's as if they can be in multiple places at once, or possess multiple properties simultaneously. Until an interaction forces them to choose a definite state. Imagine a ripple on a pond and a tiny pebble at the same time. It's a fundamental duality that defies our everyday experience. This leads us directly to the famous observer effect, perhaps best illustrated by the double-slit experiment. In this experiment, particles are fired one by one towards a barrier with two slits. If we simply let them pass through and hit a detector screen on the other side, we expect to see two distinct bands of particles corresponding to the two slits, but that's not what happens. Instead, the particles, even when fired individually, create an interference pattern on the screen, a pattern characteristic of waves passing through both slits simultaneously and interfering with each other. It's as if each individual particle somehow knows about both slits and behaves like a wave, spreading out and interfering with itself. Now, here's the mind-bending part. If you place detectors at the slits to observe which slit each particle actually goes through, the interference pattern vanishes. The active measurement of observing the past particle forces it to behave like a particle again, going through one slit or the other, and the wave-like interference disappears. The observer, by simply looking, changes the outcome. It's as if reality itself waits for permission, or for a witness, before deciding what state it will adopt. It isn't about the observer affecting the outcome with some kind of conscious projection. It's about the very act of measurement causing the quantum system to collapse from a state of probabilities into a definite reality. The quantum fuzziness also hints at another deeply perplexing phenomenon: quantum entanglement. This is what Einstein famously called spooky action at a distance. When two or more particles become entangled, they share a connected fate, no matter how far apart they are separated. If you measure a property of one entangled particle, you instantaneously know the corresponding property of the other, even if it's light years away. There's no signal passing between them. Their connection is immediate and non-local. It's as if they are still one entity, sharing information faster than the speed of light, or perhaps existing in a way that transcends spatial separation altogether. This suggests that the universe is far more interconnected, far more unified, at its deepest level than our classical intuition allows. These quantum phenomena, wave-particle duality, the observer effect, entanglement, collectively challenge the foundations of classical physics. They suggest that a reality isn't fixed, objective stage, upon which events play out independently of us. Instead, they point towards a participatory universe where consciousness, or at least the act of observation, is not merely a passive observer, but an integral part of its unfolding reality. The very act of measurement isn't just revealing what is, it's helping to determine what will be. The observed is, in a very real sense, co-created with the observer. This opens the door to a radical philosophical idea. What if consciousness isn't just an emergent property of complex biological systems like our brains? What if instead, consciousness is a fundamental aspect of the universe itself, woven into the very fabric of existence? This isn't some New Age platitude. A notion that has been seriously explored by physicists and philosophers grappling with the implications of quantum mechanics. If the universe is fundamentally participatory and interconnected, then perhaps consciousness in some form is a universal constant rather than a localized phenomenon confined to biological brains. If consciousness is indeed a fundamental aspect of reality, or if the act of observation plays such a crucial role in defining that reality, then the leap to understanding how collective consciousness might influence physical systems becomes less of a leap and more of a logical extension. Imagine the billions of minds on Earth, all experiencing a moment of intense shared emotion, fear during a crisis, joy during a celebration, grief during a tragedy. If individual observation can collapse quantum possibilities, what happens when billions of minds are focused, intentionally or unintentionally, on the same event, the same emotional state? Could this amplified, global focused consciousness create a form of non-local influence? Could it imprint itself on the probabilistic substrate of reality, subtly nudging the outcomes of random processes? The output of a random number generator, especially the one designed to harness quantum phenomena for its randomness, is precisely the kind of system that might be sensitive to such subtle influences. These devices are, in essence, measuring the universe's inherent probabilities. If those probabilities are not as fixed as we assume, if they can be influenced by the pervasive field of collective human consciousness, then the deviations observed by the random number generators during events like 9/11 might not be errors or anomalies, but rather echoes of our shared human experience. This perspective offers a potential framework for understanding how something as intangible as collective emotion could manifest in the tangible numerical output of a machine. It suggests that the universe is not a clockwork mechanism running independently of its inhabitants. Instead, it's a dynamic, interconnected system where our consciousness plays a role, however subtle, in shaping the reality we experience. The quantum realm, with its inherent uncertainty and its participatory nature, provides the theoretical playground for this interaction. The question shifts from, can consciousness influence matter, to how does this influence manifest, and how can we detect it? We are stepping away from the deterministic certainty of classical physics and into a realm of probability, potential, and participation. The very tools we use to measure randomness were designed to tap into quantum events might be inherently sensitive to the most pervasive force we know, the collective mind of humanity. The implications of our understanding of ourselves, our connection to the universe, and the true nature of reality are profound, and perhaps a little terrifying. Beyond the Veil, Reshaping Our Reality. Welcome back to Musings of a Cigarette-Smoking Man. We've traversed the perplexing landscape of quantum mechanics, glimpsed the potential for participatory universes, and how these outputs of random number generators appear to dance in step with our collective emotional states. We've looked at the rigorous yet often dismissed work of projects like PEAR and the Global Consciousness Project, which suggest that our shared human experience leaves a discernible, measurable imprint on the very fabric of reality. But now we must confront the profound and perhaps unsettling implications of these findings. If consciousness can indeed influence randomness, and by extension the physical world, what does this mean for our fundamental understanding of existence itself? This is where we begin to truly question the paradigms we've been handed. The prevailing worldview, deeply entrenched in scientific materialism, paints a picture of a universe that is fundamentally mechanical and deterministic, or at best, governed by chance events that are entirely divorced from conscious intent. In this worldview, consciousness is an emergent property of complex biological systems, a sort of sophisticated echo of physical processes, but with no causal power of its own. It's a universe where the observer is distinct from the observed, where our thoughts and feelings are confined to our skulls, with no ability to ripple outward and affect the objective world. But the data we've examined, the quantum principles we've touched upon, and the historical correlations observed during moments of global focus like 9/11 all suggest a far more nuanced and perhaps more powerful reality. They point towards a universe that is inherently interconnected, where the subjective experience of consciousness is not merely a byproduct, but an active participant in the unfolding of events. This isn't a radical departure into pure fantasy. It's an exploration of concepts that have been contemplated by physicists and philosophers for decades. Think of the idea of a conscious universe, or a participatory universe, where awareness plays a causal role, where the act of observation isn't just seeing but creating. If we accept, even provisionally, that our collective consciousness has the ability to influence physical systems, even in subtle ways, then we must grapple with what it means for individual agency versus societal influence. From a libertarian perspective, the concept of individual liberty and self-determination is paramount. We champion the power of the individual to make their own choices, to chart their own course, free from external coercion. But what if our individual power is amplified, or perhaps even guided, by the collective field of consciousness we are all a part of? Does this suggest a hidden power dynamic, where certain collective intentions or dominant emotional currents can subtly steer events? Or does it conversely highlight a latent power within humanity that has yet to be fully recognized or utilized? If our shared thoughts and emotions can influence the seemingly impartial outputs of machines, imagine their potential influence on social trends, political outcomes, or even the trajectory of global events. It suggests that we are not just passive recipients of fate, but active co-creators of our reality, bound together by an invisible, energetic web of consciousness. Consider the implications for the concept of destiny versus free will. If our collective consciousness can imprint itself on the world, does this imply a form of preordained destiny that we are collectively enacting, or does it mean our free will, when unified, possesses a far greater capacity to shape our future than we've ever dared to imagine? Perhaps destiny isn't a fixed path, but a probabilistic landscape that can be sculpted by the focused intent of a unified collective. The libertarian ideal of self-ownership and agency takes on a new dimension when viewed through the lens of this collective influence. Our individual choices matter, but perhaps they also resonate within a larger field, influencing and being influenced by the choices and emotions of millions. This understanding also serves a powerful tool for challenging the official narrative, the carefully constructed stories that often seek to limit our perception of what is possible. The insistence on a purely material and mechanistic universe serves to disempower us, to convince us that we are merely cogs in a vast and different machine. But if consciousness can indeed interact with the physical world, if our shared mental states have tangible effects, the universe is far more dynamic, more alive, and more responsive to us than we are led to believe. It implies that our perceived limitations are often constructs, barriers erected by a system that benefits from our passive acceptance of its version of reality. This isn't about succumbing to fatalism. It's about recognizing a deeper layer of causality. It's about understanding that subtle energies of human consciousness, when directed, can potentially shape outcomes. Think about the power of collective intention. If billions of minds can focus on a desired outcome, whether it's peace, healing, or particular societal change, what potential impact could that have on probabilistic currents of reality? It suggests that rather than passively waiting for change, we have the capacity, individually and collectively, to actively participate in its creation. This resonates deeply with the countercultural ethos, the idea that we can and should question authority, challenge established norms, and actively shape our own destiny, not just as individuals, but as a collective species. We are encouraged not to abandon reason, but to expand our definition of what constitutes reality, what constitutes evidence. The anomalies in RNGs, the principles of quantum mechanics, the extensive research into global consciousness, these are not fringe theories to be dismissed out of hand. They are potential keys to unlocking a more profound understanding of our place in the cosmos. They invite us to consider that the universe might be far more responsive to our awareness than we have been conditioned to believe. The power to shape our reality may not lie solely in external forces or material manipulation, but in the untapped potential of our own collective consciousness. The task before us, then, is to look beyond the veil of perceived randomness and mechanistic causality, is to recognize the potential of our shared consciousness not as a passive byproduct, but as an active shaping force. By questioning the limitations imposed by a purely materialistic worldview, we open ourselves to the possibility that we are far more powerful and far more connected than we have been led to believe. This is the frontier of our understanding, where the scientific and the spiritual, the individual and the collective converge to reveal a reality far more richer and more responsive than we could have ever imagined. It is time to embrace this potential, to understand its influence of our shared mind, and to begin consciously shaping the reality we wish to inhabit. Alright, Truth Seekers, let's talk about taking control of your life and ensuring your freedom in an increasingly uncertain world. It's time to arm yourself with the tools of self-reliance and preparedness. First up, mypatriotsupply.com. In a world teetering on the edge of instability, depending on fragile, centralized systems, is a gamble you can't afford to take. MyPatriotSupply.com offers a lifeline to independence. They provide comprehensive preparedness solutions, from long-term food storage to emergency supplies, empowering you to safeguard your family and weather any storm. Don't be a victim of circumstances. Embrace self-reliance. Secure your future. Reclaim your freedom. Next, let's talk about the most essential element of survival: clean water. That's where Alexapure water filtration comes in. Access to clean, potable water is a non-negotiable right, not a privilege, controlled by compromised public utilities. Alexapure provides reliable, independent water filtration systems, giving you peace of mind that comes from knowing that you can provide safe, clean water for yourself and your loved ones no matter what. From gravity-fed filters to whole house systems, Alexapure puts control of your water supply back in your hands. Don't gamble with your health. Secure your access to life's most vital resource with Alexapure water filtration. Discerning the signal from the noise. Call for independent thought. Now, before we get carried away with grand pronouncements about collective consciousness bending reality, it's crucial to address the skeptical elephant in the room. Projects like PAIR and the Global Consciousness Project haven't been immune to criticism, and many of those criticisms are valid and deserve careful consideration. We can't afford to blindly accept any data, no matter how intriguing it may seem. One major point of contention revolves around the potential data selection bias. Critics argue that researchers might be unconsciously or consciously cherry-picking data that supports their hypothesis, while downplaying or ignoring data that contradicts it. With vast data sets generated by these projects, the possibility of finding spurious correlations simply due to chance increases significantly. It's easy to fall into the trap of seeing patterns where none truly exist. Another challenge lies in inherently complexity systems of statistical analysis, especially when dealing with large-scale experiments. Small variations in methodology, data processing techniques, or statistical tests can yield drastically different results. The subjective interpretation of statistical significance is also a factor. What one researcher considers a compelling anomaly, another might dismiss as a mere statistical noise. Alternative explanations for the observed anomalies also need to be thoroughly explored. Could environmental factors be influencing the RNGs in ways that haven't been accounted for? Could subtle electromagnetic interference, undetected seismic activity, or even mundane equipment malfunctions be contributing to these deviations? It's crucial to exhaust all conventional explanations before resorting to more unconventional theories. This is where the spirit of libertarianism and countercultural thinking comes into play. We can't rely on authority figures or mainstream pronouncements to tell us what we believe. True understanding requires independent inquiry, a willingness to question everything, and the courage to challenge established narratives. Don't simply reject the Global Consciousness Project data because it sounds woo-woo, and don't blindly accept it because it confirms your own biases. Instead, dig deeper. Examine the methodology. Scrutinize the statistical analysis. Consider alternative explanations. Form your own conclusions based on the available evidence, and be prepared to revise your conclusions as new evidence emerges. The goal isn't to prove or disprove a particular theory, it's to seek truth wherever it may lead. This podcast isn't about providing easy answers, it's about fostering critical thinking, encouraging intellectual honesty, and empowering you, the listener, to discern the signal from the noise in a world saturated with misinformation and hidden agendas. Arm yourself with knowledge, sharpen your skepticism, and become an active participant in the search for truth. The universe is far stranger and more wondrous than we could possibly imagine, and the journey of discovery is just beginning. So there you have it, true seekers, your journey through the enigmatic realms of randomness, consciousness, and the quantum field. We've questioned the very fabric of reality, daring to suggest that the universe might be far more interconnected and responsive to human consciousness than conventional science currently admits. The central thesis, provocative as it may be, lingers. Are we merely passive observers in a deterministic universe, or are we active participants, co-creating reality with every thought, every emotion, every shared experience? The anomalies in the random number generators during events like 9/11 offer a tantalizing glimpse into this possibility, a subtle whisper from the machine suggesting a deeper, unseen connection. Questions remain unanswered, challenging us to ponder the far-reaching implications for our own lives and the collective human experience. What if our thoughts and emotions have a tangible impact on the world around us? What if the power to shape our reality lies not just in external forces, but in the untapped potential of our shared consciousness? Here at Musings of a Cigarette-Smoking Man, we remain committed to exploring the fringe, the unexplained, and the suppressed, to challenging the official narratives and encouraging you, the listener, to question everything. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Support independent media, continue questioning, research further, and never stop seeking truth, no matter how uncomfortable it may be. And remember, sometimes the greatest conspiracies are hidden in plain sight, masked by the illusion of randomness. What if I told you the moon landing was real, but the moon itself isn't? Thanks for being here with me tonight. I've really enjoyed it, and thanks for hanging out. I'm Stephen Lee. We're gonna win.